Hey, what's up guys? Alex here, and what we're going to talk about in this video is how to de-vig a market, how to remove the juice, the vig, the house edge, whatever you want to call it, from a sports betting market, and we are going to find a profitable bet in the process, which is on FanDuel, Warriors to win the Western Conference at plus 480 odds. Right, so we're focusing on Western Conference futures odds in this video, but this process can be applied to any market. It doesn't matter if it's a two-way market, a three-way market, or a 15-leg market like this one. This process can be applied to anything. So the first question is, what is the juice? What is the vig? And it's how sportsbooks make money, right? The way that DraftKings makes money, it's not like I log into DraftKings and every time I want to place a bet, they charge me a fee, right? It's not like they charge me $1 for every $100 I bet. That's not how sportsbooks work. The way they work is they make their money by giving you odds that you can bet on that the sportsbook doesn't think are good, right? So on DraftKings, you can get Lakers plus 270 to win the Western Conference, and this means that DraftKings thinks this is a bad bet. They're giving you a price that they think is bad. The way that sportsbooks make money is by giving you prices that they think are bad, right? So the next question is, well, if sportsbooks are giving bad prices, why even try? Like, how can you even make money sports betting? And the reason is sportsbooks have different odds, right? Like in the Lakers Heat game tomorrow, you can see you can get the Lakers plus 160 on Caesars. They're only plus 133 on Barstool, plus 140 on Fox Bet, plus 134 on FanDuel. So there are line discrepancies, right? This is what makes sports betting interesting, is sportsbooks have different odds. So what you're always doing as a sharp sports bettor is you are looking through the sports betting market and you are looking for value, right? You are looking for odds that are too good to be true or better than fair, better than the true odds. So anyways, let's get to it. Let's get to removing the vig from this NBA Western Conference futures market. So the first thing I did was I took the odds from every sportsbook for Western Conference winner and put them into this sheet, right? So here we have FanDuel, right? You can see the Warriors are plus 480, Jazz plus 440. It's all right here. And we have for BetRivers, PointsBet, Caesars, MGM, Fox Bet, DraftKings, FanDuel, Circa, Pinnacle, and Wynn, we have the odds. Now, the next thing we need to do, as we've done in other videos, is convert these odds into implied probabilities. So you can use an odds converter calculator from OddsJam. So what you can see is, the Lakers are plus 250 on BetRivers. That implies a probability of 28.57%. In other words, if the Lakers are more than 28.57%, percent to win the Western Conference, plus 250 on the Lakers would be a profitable bet. And if they're less than 28.57% to win the Western Conference, then plus 250 would be an unprofitable bet, right? So the first thing we do is we put all the odds, into this spreadsheet, and then we converted them into implied probabilities. So here we have 28.57%, which is what we saw, from the odds converter calculator for plus 250. And again, you can see why sports betting's fun is all these sportsbooks have different odds, right? On the Lakers, only plus 250 on BetRivers and PointsBet, but you can get them plus 300 on FanDuel, plus 304 on Pinnacle, and it's our job to figure out, as a sports bettor, are any of these betting opportunities profitable? Are any of these betting opportunities good? So we convert them to implied probabilities, and then we sum them up, right? So for BetRivers, we sum all of the implied probabilities for every possible outcome, and we can see it comes out to roughly 1.16. What this means, what this number means, the sum of the implied probabilities, is if you were betting to win $100 on every team to win the Western Conference, you would have to bet $116 or $115.93 to win back your 100. So when this number, when this sum of implied probabilities is greater than 1, it means you have a market with juice, right? Which is basically always going to be the case. The sportsbook's almost never going to give you a market with no juice or a fair market. So what we can do next is we can calculate the juice of the given sportsbook's market by doing 1 minus 1 over the sum of implied probabilities. So this tells you the hold of the sports betting market. So for BetRivers, it's 13.744%, which means if you are betting blindly on NBA Western Conference future winner odds on BetRivers, you are going to lose roughly 13.74% of your money. You have an expected return of negative 13.74, right? That's how sportsbooks make money, right? They give you odds that they think are bad, and what this means is roughly for every $100 bet on BetRivers on NBA Western Conference winners, BetRivers is making 13.74%. And you can see some sportsbooks have more juice than others. PointsBet 14.7, so 1% higher than BetRivers. Caesars is the lowest actually. The hold on their market is only 12%. So it's pretty interesting to see, but it looks like for Western Conference NBA futures, Caesars is currently offering the best odds overall. So now we have the implied probabilities, the sum of implied probabilities. And again, in a fair market or a market with zero hold, the sum of implied probabilities will sum to 1, right? If you think about a market with no hold, let's say, you have some NBA money line where one team is minus 110, their opponent is plus 110, the sum of implied probabilities would be 1, and this market would be, it would have no vig, it would have no juice baked into it if a sportsbook were offering a market where the sum of implied probabilities goes to 1. So what you want to do to de-vig a market is you want to take these probabilities and divide by the sum of implied probabilities. So for BetRivers, for the Lakers, you want to divide 0.2857 by this 1.159, which gets you to 24.6%. And you want to do this for every possible odd for a given sportsbook. You want to divide all of these by 1.159 to find the zero vig line, right? This gets you the no vig win probability, right? So for every sportsbook, we can do that. We can take the implied probabilities, divide by the sum of implied probabilities for that sportsbook, and we get the fair implied win percentage from that bookmaker. So, on BetRivers, the Lakers are 24.64. And you can do that for every single sportsbook. And then we can also take an average of that number, right? So the Lakers roughly, if you take an average of every sportsbook we look at in this video, BetRivers, PointsBet, Caesars, MGM, FoxBet, DraftKings, FanDuel, Circa, Pinnacle, WinBet, you take an average, it's 23.35%. That is the implied fair win probability when you take an average of all of these different sportsbooks, right? So this is a market with no juice. By dividing these implied probabilities with juice by 1.159, what we're doing is we're standardizing this market to have a sum of implied probabilities of 1, which is a market with no hold or no juice. In other words, roughly our estimate of the fair win probability. So we can do that here. We have for every sportsbook the no vig win percentage, removing the juice, removing the vig from the market, and then we take an average. So now we have to do one more step, which is convert these odds into no vig, or we have to convert these win probabilities from no vig win probabilities into no vig odds. So what we're doing in this video is we're converting, the sportsbook odds to implied probabilities. We're finding the sum of implied probabilities. Then we're standardizing these markets to have a sum of implied probabilities of 1 by dividing by the current sum of implied probabilities, and then we're converting these fair win percentages back into odds, which you can see right here, right? So what we can do now, or what we're doing here with this conversion, so we're taking this 24.64% from BetRivers, which is the no vig win percentage of the Lakers, and we're converting that back into an odd. No vig odds, right? Odds have an inherent relationship with implied win probability. So what you're always doing as a sports bettor is you're thinking about the odds you're getting and what the fair odds should be based on the fair win percentage. So we can see right here for BetRivers, the zero vig line on the Lakers, or the zero vig win percentage is 24.64%. So we put in 24.64, and we can see, the zero vig odds would be plus 305.84. which is what you can see right here. It's slightly different because of rounding. So this means, based on BetRivers market of what they're currently giving you, once you remove the juice, the hold, whatever you want to call it, from the sportsbooks market, the Lakers actually should be plus 305.7. That would be the fair price implied from BetRivers Market. And you can do that for all these sports books, right? So the Lakers would be plus 305.7, removing the juice from BetRivers Market. They'd be plus 310.49 once you remove the juice from PointsBet's Market, plus 320.73, removing the juice from Caesars Market. And you can kind of go through all the books. And then you can look at the average, right? So you can see the Lakers, if you take the average of the no vig win probability right here, the Lakers should be roughly plus 328. That's the average. So that is our estimate of the fair probability or the fair odds of the Lakers winning the Western Conference, plus 328. Now, what you can see is you can't get plus 328 odds on any of these books, right? The best odds we can get on the Lakers to win the Western Conference is plus 304 on Pinnacle, which is worse than the no vig odds. So that's a bet we'd want to skip. So long story short, there's no good spots to bet the Lakers because the no vig odds are higher than the best odds we can get on any sports book. But with the Warriors, it's a bit different. On FanDuel, you can get plus 480 on the Warriors, and the average is plus 453. So our estimate of the fair odds of the Warriors winning the Western Conference is plus 453.6, and we can get plus 480 on FanDuel. And if you just kind of do a comparison between different sports books, plus 480 does seem like the outlier. It seems pretty dang good. BetRivers is only giving you plus 350 on the Warriors, PointsBet plus 300, Caesars plus 400, MGM 425, Fox Bet 450, Circa plus 310, and on FanDuel you can get plus 480 on the Warriors to win the Western Conference. And we can also do a gut check, which is pretty interesting, but Circa Sportsbook, so they are a pretty sharp sportsbook in the United States. They're only giving you plus 310 on the Warriors to win the Western Conference. But what you can see is they actually have a two-way market, right, on the Warriors to win the Western Conference. They're plus 310. Yes, Warriors win the Western Conference, and minus 425. No, Warriors do not win the Western Conference Finals. So what you can see is, if you were in Colorado and could bet on Circa Sports Colorado, you could arb this. FanDuel is plus 480 on the Warriors to win, and Circa is minus 425 on the Warriors not to win. And they're the only sportsbook, I believe, in the United States that offers two-way betting markets on teams to win conferences, right? They also have it for, NBA championship. Like you can see Nets to win the NBA championship is plus 315 yes, minus 435 no. And here you can get the Warriors plus 410, or you can sell the Warriors at minus 425 odds to not win the Western Conference. So again, we have an arb between FanDuel and Circa is a pretty sharp sports book. And also, the odds on FanDuel, this plus 480, is beating the no vig odds, right? Is beating the average of the zero vig odds, right? And you can see that FanDuel plus 480, you're beating, if you look at them independently from sportsbook to sportsbook, the zero vig line from WinBet is 415, Circa plus 382, Pinnacle plus 436. So the odds, just as a gut check, look pretty good, right? So this looks like a great betting spot, especially if you're trying to bet on the Warriors, get some action on the Warriors. Getting them plus 480 at FanDuel is probably as good of a spot as you'll ever find. So I hope you found this video helpful. As a sum up, because I know it's a little complicated if you've never thought about sports betting in this way, is to de-vig a market. You take the odds for every outcome, you convert them to implied probabilities with an odds converter calculator right here. So you put in the odds, like Lakers plus 250, implied probability 28.57%. And then you put those right here. You sum up these implied probabilities, and you get your sum of implied probabilities for a given sportsbook. To de-vig the market, you divide these implied probabilities by the sum of implied probabilities to standardize that market to 1, and then you have your no vig win probabilities, and then you convert these no vig win probabilities back into odds, which is what we do right here. And if you have any questions about this, you can of course reach out to us. I know it's a bit of a confusing topic, and I feel like Maybe I could have explained that better, but anything at all, you can reach out to us, and thanks so much for your time.